Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll walk you through our study plan, and I'll be starting this presentation. Greg Evans will be going through a few slides as well, and then we'll introduce you to two graduate students extraordinaire, Emily and Wiam, and they'll be in touch with you much more often than we do, because they're going to be the ones installing sensors on your balconies, and you'll see them in their neighborhood quite often. So the vision of the project, very briefly, is what we really want to do here is develop and showcase best practice in addressing the impacts of large construction hubs on air quality. Through this project, we really want to understand how can we better do construction, and how can we integrate, the element of air quality, and later on other teams might be working on noise as well around construction hubs. We know that things like, the Yonge and Eglinton construction hub, there's a lot of value in densifying our city, right? It makes transit more viable. It makes walking and active transportation more viable. It reduces our carbon footprint. There's a lot of value for these kind of projects. But then if you live next door to a construction hub like that, you might not see all of these benefits at the onset. And this is where, the project vision is. How do we help our city, decarbonize, become more sustainable, while at the same time, enhancing air quality and other co-benefits for local communities. In terms of our goals, the primary goal is we want to build a partnership between us as the university, the industry, the construction industry, government, we've got the City of Toronto, perhaps other government agencies, and of course, you as the community, to better understand, how can we better do construction? We want to develop and evaluate methods to characterize the Yonge and Eglinton hub. There's a lot of things that we're deploying, we're learning, we're going to showcase all the different technologies that we're deploying to collect data. We certainly want to engage the local community. And for those of you here at the meeting, we really want you to go back and echo everything that's discussed with the rest of the community. This does not work if we do not have community engagement. You live in this area, in this neighborhood, you experience construction, and through your experience, you become experts in a lot of the things that we won't know unless we hear from you. And of course, we want to mobilize this knowledge to encourage adoption in other parts of Toronto as well as in other cities. We started the first phase of this project, and this will be wrapping up in December. And this first phase was meant to collect a lot of local air quality data, and Greg will walk you through some of the very early results. We want to start engaging with the local community. We want to start installing air pollution sensors on your balconies, and we're recruiting volunteers to do that so we can better understand how air pollution from the construction sites and from traffic at the construction sites is impacting you specifically at home. And we want to use this knowledge to sort of start designing more comprehensive follow-up assessments, right? And more comprehensive and wider range of techniques to better capture the impacts of air quality. So in this first project phase, what we've done is we did some mobile sampling in car. So we had vehicles driving around the neighborhood, and Greg will walk you through some of the very early results to better understand what is the change in air pollutants as we move away and closer from these construction sites. What we want to do, and we want to start that very soon in the fall, is start working with you as a local community to deploy air quality monitors on your balconies. And Emily will walk you a little bit through those kind of technologies and what is required when we install them on your balconies. So Greg, you can go ahead and let me know when you want me to go through the next slide.
All right, well, why don't we switch to the next slide. So this is just some very early results. Just checking to make sure I'm not on mute. No, I'm not on mute. Perfect. These are from some mobile sampling that were done with two vehicles equipped with air quality monitoring instruments. There was one shown on the previous slide, and we measured a number of pollutants, and I'm only going to show results for one here. This is particulate matter 2.5, which means it's the particles that can get deep down in the lungs. This is what governments regulate at the moment. The sampling was done on 11 different days between May and September 2021. And I should note that the many construction projects were in a different phase a year ago than they are now. What we're trying to show here is as we go on roads, go in from the north, starting on Blythewood and Sheldrake, and then look at roads closer to the center. So for example, Broadway is pretty clear here. Eglinton Avenue, where there's more than just high rise going up, a lot of construction there. And then head more to the south, get down to Sudan, for example, and then all the way down to Davisville. We see a definite profile in terms of how the concentrations of PM 2.5 are increasing. So this gave us the indication that there were things that we should be looking into. We looked a bit further at this, and certainly how close a location was to a ongoing construction site, particularly one in the excavation stage, made a difference as well. So we started mapping out where we thought there would be differences in the air quality. To get an indication, these are not extraordinarily high concentrations of PM 2.5. The average for Toronto is about 8 to 10, for example. But certainly what we saw on, say, Broadway or Eglinton was above this. So they're not super high concentrations, but definitely they're higher than we're seeing in other parts of the city. So that's something to look at. Go on to the next slide. So what we want to do is a follow-up, and this is where I want to spend a fair bit of time for this meeting, but it'll only be a few slides, so we'll have lots of time for discussion, is looking at how residents are actually experiencing this. So this is what we refer to as balcony sampling, and Emily's going to tell you a little more about it. I'll explain the philosophy and why it is we're looking for locations in certain parts of the Yonge and Eglinton hub. So there's two parts to it. One, can you see my mouse, for example? Can you see the cursor anywhere? Nope, I will see.
Yes, yes.
No.
Yeah, we can see.
You can see it, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So there's two parts to this. One is what we call the perimeter sampling, where we're looking for locations to the west, to the north.
I cannot longer see it. I don't know.
No, you're seeing mine because I'm the one who is
Oh, okay.
screen
Okay.
sharing. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So up
so
to
I
the
can.
north. So we had the west, and we're looking at trying to measure the air quality as wind comes in from the west, as it more often does. So we're looking for homes, apartments that have balconies sort of on the north or south side, so that as the wind blows by it, we can measure the air quality coming in. We're looking for on the north on Erskine, the same idea when wind comes from the north as well, measure the air quality coming in. And then we'll compare this to what we see on the east. So here we have one down in Roehampton to see if there's an increase as it travels across the region. And we'll see it do the same thing from the north at Erskine down to the south at Sudan, again, to see if we detect an increase. So that's part of the balcony sample. And the second is a more intensive look at Broadway, because it looks like more of the construction at the moment is in the Broadway area. And so here the idea is to measure any change in the air quality as wind goes down Broadway, as we travel from Yonge Street to Mount Pleasant. Again, winds in Toronto tend to more often come from the west. And so we're going to hopefully see that. So that's the idea of these preferred balcony locations. So if we go to the next slide, we'll provide just a bit more detail on that. We're looking for these perimeter sites on the west side. We identified a few possible buildings that seem to have balconies oriented in the right way, that seem to be just near the perimeter. So we're looking for balconies on the north or south. Ideally, these will be balconies on the 3rd to 6th floor. We want to keep the level roughly the same at all the sites, but I'll get to that in a second. On the north side, we identified 101 Erskine. It could be one of the buildings beside there, but something sort of in the center on the perimeter to the north side. Same idea on the east side. We identified 2 possible buildings. Again, balconies on the north side for these two balconies because they're right on Roehampton on the south side. And then to the south, we have two buildings on Lillian, right at Sudan. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is we want to look at how it varies with elevation. So for one of these buildings, we're looking to try to find balconies at the lower level, the medium level, and the upper level. What we found in past work is that the concentrations of air pollutants that are coming from local sources tend to drop off pretty quickly as you go upwards. So there's a difference between being at the 3rd to 6th floor versus the 15th to 20th floor. However, this may depend on what's going on in the building beside you being built. So it may not always be the case. So we'd try to look at that. So that's a second set of homes we're looking to hopefully to find as partners. And the third set, if you go to the next slide, are the idea of doing what we call a transect as we go from Yonge Street, for example, at 7 Broadway, over to Mount Pleasant at Place du Soleil, trying to find balconies along there in the 3rd to 6th floor area. So that's what we're looking for, and we'll come back to this in the discussion. We'll use that time, let people make introductions, etc. And because I know where some of you live, because we've chatted before, but there's a number of new people here as well. If we go on to the next slide. 7 Broadway doesn't have one. Thank you, Renee. Okay. I'll pass it back to you, Marianne, if you want to introduce phase 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I should have noted that phase 1 is going up to about the end of December. We're just in the process of trying to extend it. And so this phase 2 will overlap with that, in that we have started some aspects of phase 2 already.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's still really left in phase 1 is that balcony monitoring, and which is why, you know, Greg spent a fair bit amount of time today talking about these buildings, because it's really crucial that we identify participants living in at those locations.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you be sharing these slides at the end? Because that information we can share on our websites and everything else, so we can attract people, so we can be more specific. I know in some of your emails were very specific which phase of the buildings you were looking at. And that's important, because I can say I can give you my balcony, but it's facing west and south away from the construction. I don't know if you want that. So and you were more specific in the past, so I wonder if you could do that as well.
We'd be happy to share the slides, share the recording, and this is an aspirational list. Certainly, we will sample, make the best choices of what people can make available.
Okay.
So even something to the north, for example, could potentially be useful to monitor the air coming in, if it was, for example, on Erskine, but depends where it is. So.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe, Michael, what we can do for you, we could share the slide deck and the recording, but we will also prepare sort of that same message that was sent in the email. We'll prepare something that you can put on your website.
Yeah, please. That would be very powerful. Now, we can talk at the end. That's all right. Don't let me interrupt your presentation at this point. We've got a little more discussion going later.
And we've, yeah, for people, so Renee, I saw you put a comment in the chat. Encourage anybody who has thoughts, throw it in the chat so we can come back to a discussion. And we've got about 5 more slides here, so it's not a long presentation. So yeah, go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, so in this second phase, which has started, and as I said, will overlap with phase 1, we want to dig a little bit deeper, and we want to understand the impacts of different construction activities. So what's happening during excavation? We want to understand the impacts of different machinery, the different types of trucks that are going in. How much of the pollution is coming from the trucks versus from construction and from demolition, for example. And this is where you're going to see we will have different kinds of monitoring to help us better capture the impacts of different phases of construction and different activities and machinery. We will continue, of course, to engage with the local community to assess the exposure of residents, and we will dive again deeper in the data collected from the balcony monitoring to understand the trends by time of day, try to correlate them with different construction activities going on and see, you know, impacts of elevation, of wind direction, etc. Then we will start also assessing some background concentration of air pollutants at the other construction hubs, right? At the places where construction activities have not begun yet. So we can really compare the before and after, which is something we weren't able to do for Yonge and Eglinton, right? But we want to seize the opportunity to do this moving forward. And then start working on strategies for air quality monitoring and for mitigation, right? How can we enable construction to keep going on, but differently than the way it's done right now? So in this phase, we will be, and we have already started installing fixed air pollution sensors on the ground. And these are being installed on traffic signal lights in and around the Yonge and Eglinton project. And the City of Toronto has been absolutely crucial and very proactive in getting things done. We have a number of sensors that are already installed. We will also be installing traffic cameras to monitor truck traffic, especially going in and out of construction sites, and relate sort of that truck traffic with the air pollution that we're reading at these sensors. We'll also be, again, through the participation and the help of the City of Toronto, we're going to be partnering with some construction sites and sampling very, very close to the construction project sites. Again, to better understand the impacts of different phases and different machinery, as well as, you know, obtaining data on construction activities during the day, you know, what's happening at this site at different times of day. And this really needs, you know, partnership and collaboration by the construction sites. And we will continue, of course, deploying air quality monitors in homes. So this will start now, and hopefully we will, as soon as possible, we want to start deploying those sensors on balconies, and we will continue up until the end of December. This gives you an idea of some, and Greg, maybe I'll let you go through this to just mention how many more intersections we're going to be covering using these sensors. This is a map of the sensors that are installed on the ground at the traffic signal poles.
Yeah, so far we have 12 of these 14 in place, and this is due to the hard work of the city. So the city has been a big partner in this, and I see Stuart is on the call. So when we get to doing introductions after we did this presentation, you know, Stuart, if you want to provide any additional context, that would be great. The idea is that we're looking for differences across the roadway. We're looking at whether we need to have one on each of the four corners, or whether it'll be adequate for to have one on opposing sides, which is what we hope to do in the other locations and the other hubs across the city. The other ones are at the corner of Broadway and Redpath. 100 Broadway, there's a building going up there, and they have been wonderful as collaborators. I see that little stars on the wrong side of the road. It should be on the north side of the road. That's where that is going to go in. It hasn't gone in yet. And then there's also an older building that will put a balcony sampler on the balcony that's right overlooking the construction site. So that's where we're going to be monitoring the construction site. Question on the chat: are the results from these monitors going to be shared? Yes, that is the intent. They will be shared. At the moment, we're just still getting them in place, making sure everything's working properly. But we do hope through the city that these results will be publicly shared. It may be the live results, which frankly can be a little overwhelming because there's quite a number of pollutants and they're collecting data in some cases every minute or so. Or it'll be summaries that we distribute or share at other meetings like this. But definitely the idea is that the results will be shared. That's an important part of the process. I think that's it for these monitors, other than if you see that little green circle on the side there, That's what one of the monitors looked like. So next time you're out for a walk, going over to Mount Pleasant or Yonge Street, look up and you'll see some of these sensors there.
Very good.
If you pass it back, I think we'll pass it over to Emily.
Yeah. So these sensors that you can see in the pictures are the CT air sensors, and those are the sensors that will be placed on the balconies. So these were the sites we were mentioning earlier. We're on the perimeter of the neighborhood and also going east to west. So essentially we'll drop off the monitor at your home. It's a pretty simple setup. I think I did it myself when I was testing these. It just takes a few minutes. And then we'll leave it at your home for about 4 weeks and then come back to pick it up. And they measure a variety of pollutants listed here. So nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, ozone, as well as temperature and humidity. And these sensors will help us understand the outdoor air quality at your home level. So not just at the street, but say if you're on a 10th floor balcony, what the air looks like at your balcony. We'll also be able to look at the effect of floor level on air quality. So does any construction activity or traffic have different impacts if you're at the 2nd floor versus the 20th floor? And we'll also be able to look at exposure to different sources. So construction activity, traffic, and how it differs at the street level versus home. That was all I have for this slide.
And we will also be sending out surveys and holding focus group sessions to residents in the community throughout the timeline of the project. These activities have questions about the impacts of construction sites on air quality in the neighborhood and will help us understand the residents' perception on this topic, as well as track the change in perception throughout the course of the air quality monitoring program. The next slide, please.
All right, well,
Yeah.
sounds good. Thank you both, Emily and Wiam. And this is all we have for today. Keep track of our email addresses, but I know that Emily is always in touch with you, and she's set up, quite a few means of communicating with us as well. And with this, I think we can open it up for discussion, questions.
And I think we'll ask people if you can just introduce yourself and remind us where you live. And Michael, I think I know who you are, but just go through it again. I think I remember 25 as well, but yeah.
May I start?
Sure, and then we'll pass it on to Stuart. Yeah.
I'm Michael Ioannou. I live on 25 Broadway, as you said. I'm representing the Republic Residents Association, basically from the 25 Broadway, 70 Roehampton, the school area, not representing the school, but at least taking care of some of the issues around the school and some of the other neighboring buildings, including 7 Broadway, where Renee is at. We're both part of the Residents Association. And we've been pretty active, actually, before you even got engaged in trying to sensitize the city about the fact that we're going to have some massive construction going on in our neighborhood, and that will become prudent for everybody to understand what the issues are around air quality, as well as noise and a whole bunch of other issues, traffic patterns and everything else that we went through. This is very interesting. This is very important. I personally like, as an engineer, I like what I see from that point of view. I do want, however, want to make sure that we have an actionable element on our part to be able to help you. And for me to be able to say that is for us to be able, number one, get the slides. To be able to identify the buildings that you're interested, send our communications out to residents and find volunteers. That we can do with this information we got. The next piece is, how do I communicate it back to you, and how do we close the loop to make sure that the information we're gathering and the information number one is the information you need, and what information and how do we pass it on to you. And that, to me, that's part of the action plan that really to think through right now how to engage actively on this issue.
Great. Do you want to take that, Marianne? Do you want me to? I guess I've started already, too late. Yeah, certainly providing the slides having an actionable element. Communicating back will be mostly through Wiam and Emily. However, we're easily found. Our email addresses are easily found. I know for myself, email is the best by far way to reach me. So I'm halfway through that generation of still using the telephone and going on to other social media. So I'm still very much email.